In this video, I want to share with you 3 things that you might want to consider when you're creating your layout plan and when you are installing your Ikea kitchen, because not doing so might have an impact on the finished result. I hope you like this video, and I do hope as well that you would subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. And the first thing I want to tell you about is, yes, knobs and handles. And let's start with the knobs. When you look at this picture, you can see there's 2 types of knobs. One is circular and one is not. And which one do you think I prefer? Yes, correct, the circular one, because the circular one will always sit right. It will never look, slanted or anything, because as it is, it's circular. Whereas the other one that is not circular can be, tilted a bit or not sitting in the right position. And I don't know about you, but it would certainly bother me to look at. And even though they can be tightened really firm, over time, they will come loose a little bit, and then problem starts. So pick the circular one. And now we move on to a handle that I really don't like. And I know it's a favorite. A lot of people love this handle from Ikea. It's called kallrör, or however they say it in Sweden. But at first it looks really nice. But if you're into details like me, you don't like it. Because here's what happens. Apart from 2 screws, this handle is a 3-piece thing. It consists of these 3 pieces I have marked with arrows here. So there's 1 long bar and 2 small hollow pieces of pipe. And they all put together as a handle. And the problem starts when you put it on, because those 2 small pieces, they will not sit perpendicular to the longer handle. And you may think, oh, well, is that important? And maybe it's not important to you, but I certainly don't like it that when I look down from the top and look down on a set of drawers, that those small pieces are pretty much pointing in every direction possible. And I don't like to see that. That would drive me nuts. So what do I do instead? Well, you can get a handle like that looks exactly the same, just not from Ikea. If you go to, for instance, Home Depot and one of your local hardware stores, you can find a handle where it's not a 3-piece thing, but it's all in a 1-piece. So those 2 small pipes, they are actually soldered or welded or whatever to the longer one, and it will be 1 solid piece that will sit much better than this item from Ikea. So number 2 on my list of things we would like to avoid has to do with panels on islands. And this is on double rows islands in particular. That is when you have 2 lines of cabinets being mounted back to back. And you can see there's 2 rows of cabinets. One is shallow and one is full depth cabinets. And when you have this situation, Ikea do not have a panel that really goes well for this. So there's a bit of consideration to be done when installing this. And in this example, which I actually took at Ikea, you can see what Ikea is doing. And I don't like that one bit, because when we zoom in, we can see how I don't know what to call it, the joint of those 2 panels, because both of them have been cut to fit. And I don't think it looks good. But if you're okay with that, you can jump forward to the next item on my list, or you can stick with it and see what I'm doing about it. Before I tell you how to avoid this problem with the panels sitting like that back to back, I want to point out what the problem is. Since Ikea do not have a panel that will fit the end of the island with 2 cabinets sitting like that, you need to combine 2 panels to get that coverage. And the panels Ikea use for that is a 25-inch wide panel and a 15-inch wide panel. But if you take those 2 panels and you just sit them back to back, you have 40 inches in total. But your cabinets are not 40 inches, so the panel will protrude too much at the front and at the back. Thus, they need to be cut. And that's what they did. So they cut both panels and put them on back to back, and then you have that ugly seam running down the middle. So in order to avoid this, and in order to not cut the panels at all, we have to create some distance between those two rows of cabinets. And the way we want to do that is to put on the island assembly kit. That is a kit you can get at Ikea, and you are mounting it on the back of the cabinets. By squeezing in these island assembly kit between those two rows of cabinets, you will push them apart, and the distance from front to back, the depth of the island, will be exactly what you need for using the 15 and the 25-inch panels without cutting them. I'm not going to go into details on the assembly kit for the island, because there will be a separate video on how to build an island. But what I do want to say is that the upper bracket, you will just push towards the back of the cabinet, so it's protruding a bit, and that means that that strip of wood MDF sitting on top of the cabinet will be sticking out. What you do at the bottom, if you put it in the normal way, but then you take a second strip and put on top of the first one, so now the top and the bottom has that same distance to the cabinet, and you do that for all the cabinets, and then you put them up back to back. And now you have that perfect distance that when you put on the panels, you don't need to cut them, and they will have the exact same width as the depth of the island, plus whatever you want it to protrude at the doors. One last thing I want to say about this panel situation is that when the cabinets has been tied in together, and you have the island sitting there all finished and ready to have panels put on at the end, you want to take the narrow panel and put on the full depth cabinet as shown in this sketch, because that is a much better solution than having the opposite, where you have the full width panel on the full depth cabinet, because now you'll have the joint on the side of the cabinet, and you'll be able to screw from the inside, and you'll have a perfect fit. If you try to get that where those two cabinets will meet, it will not look great. Trust me on this, so you want to do it like this. And finally, the third thing that we would like to avoid in our kitchen layout plan, and certainly in the installation. Yes, the Deco Strip, or whatever we can call it, Soffit on top of the cabinets. I do not like that one. And I know that many people, they go to Ikea and see it sitting up there, and they say, oh, that looks nice. I want that on my kitchen. But now I will tell you why you in most cases cannot have it, and in those cases where you can have it, why you don't want to have it. In most houses you have 96 inches from floor to the ceiling, and that is on a good day, because most houses I have visited is anywhere between 94.5 and 95.5, sometimes 96. But the problem is that the Ikea cabinets, if you have the high cabinets or the high wall cabinets, they are 94.5 inches from the top of the cabinet down to the floor. And then you can see that if you only have 94.5 or 95, there is simply no room to squeeze in that thing on top of the cabinets. So, and that is more often than not the case when I come out and I measure a kitchen for people, that there's no room for that thing. So if you want to go with those high cabinets, there's not much you can do. If you do not have a high cabinet that is kind of a bridge between the uppers and the lowers, you can always decide to lower the upper cabinets a few inches so you got room to squeeze it in, like you see in this picture. But it's not a great solution, and you cannot do that if you have a high cabinet, because that high cabinet has to line up with the base cabinet next to it at the bottom, as you can see here, and it has to line up on top of the cabinets as well with the uppers. So you're kind of locked in to have that distance. And if you do not have the high cabinet and you say, oh, no, we'll just lower it a few inches, well, then you kind of jeopardize that space you have between your uppers and your lowers. And that means you can have some small appliances like a coffee maker or a mixer standing on your countertop, and there's no room to have it there really, because you lowered the uppers. So you don't want to put it in there. If you don't have the space, you certainly don't want to try to find a way. Don't do that. Now, if you then tell me, oh, I do have the space, I got high ceilings, 108 inches, can I have that thing on top? And I say, Sure, but you're not gonna like it because you may go to IKEA and you can see it on display that it's sitting there and you like that look and it looks nice, but try to take a closer look. I took this picture at IKEA because I had a client who was saying I like that thing on top of my cabinets. And I said, try to take a closer look and see how you think it lines up. And as you will see here, you got a variety of distance between that thing or that strip and the doors, and it's sticking out at some part where it's not sticking out as much at other parts. So I do not think it looks great. I will leave it up to you what you think in case you have the room for putting that thing, but I would certainly not recommend it. In my opinion, it's extremely difficult to make that thing, that strip, sit with the same distance because it is protruding over the doors and it is sitting on top of the cabinets. And the cabinets are not always super aligned with the doors because when we have installed everything, we do align the doors so they're sitting next to each other, but that doesn't mean that the doors are sitting perfectly to the cabinet behind it because the world is not vertical, flat, horizontal, and all those right angles that I love so much. That's just not how our rooms are. So you will not be able to make it look perfect. And if you're okay with less than perfect, go ahead, put it up, but you won't see it in my kitchen. If you made it this far, I thank you for watching and I hope you learned something. I'm sorry it was a lot of talk, but sometimes that's what it takes to explain certain difficult topics.